Like I said, there's nothing wrong with Karl Marx, but where it goes all wrong is when Karl Marx applies to human beings, because we like to play games. And it would appear that gaming is an idea that is new to us, but it's been with us all the time. The idea whereby we set ourselves on people who are different from us is in itself a game. The idea that we can impose our views and believe that those views are right, to the point whereby we can be righteous about the way we behave, the way in which we project ourselves, is in the form of a game. A game whereby it can be mathematically calculated, and it could even be simulated. And this is something that I did in the game. I would play around with what you call the resource elements and the bars, and I would basically just like sit back and see what happened. And I was able to see the before, during, and after. I was able to register those human dynamics that made up the whole idea of what I refer to as the neural network, the internet. That swirl of information that's just like going around and round and round, and it's an idea that need not have a purpose. It could be something like graffiti, and I want you to think about it, because when you write something in the internet, I mean, you don't really think about what happens in 10 or 20 years time. It's a bit like graffiti. You just write it, and the act of writing itself is a form of oppositional belief, the idea that you can go against the system. And so you write, you post it, and you've done your part, and you feel good about it. Well, you feel good about it because you're just playing a game. You are part of a game, believe it or not. And that's what I discovered, that you can be part of a game and still not realize it, or worse still, the game could be playing you instead of you playing it. And I'm not talking about addiction, because that is not something that is related to what I'm talking about. There could be stupid people who are trying to link this whole idea with what I'm saying, but I just want to be very clear. This has nothing to do with gaming addiction, and this has everything to do with what I refer to as personhood. Whether you value yourself as a human being, and how does that correlate with the idea of how you see yourself? Well, it correlates because if you're part of a group, then you can't be an individual. And if you're not an individual, then it stands to reason you are part of that group. And if you're part of that group, then it's conceivable that your belief system is based on group dynamics rather than what may come up from your own brain. And group dynamics is a dangerous thing, because it goes back to what I said about gaming again, and putting people in an environment whereby they are basically competing ceaselessly with each other in a network that involves a complicity of power and politics. They will play games, they will use a gamut of tools in order to carve out a competitive edge, to get a beachhead, to get that place in your brain, that sliver called the hearts and minds. They can do that, and I was able to see them do that. And good did not prevail. That was the final prognosis, or rather my greatest regret. When I saw the process of decay for the first time, I said to myself that this could just be a passing phase. It would get worse before it gets better. In a sense, it's a bit like a farmer who grows a tree, and then he starts to notice that one of the branches are yellowing, and then the following week he notices 2 branches and 3, and he hopes that that tree will not die. And I was basically infected with that same type of mood, sentiment, and emotional feeling when I saw that the game was spiraling out of control. And I watched. good did not prevail. Good did not prevail. It took me about 4 years to play it all out. And I saw that good did not prevail. And this should lead us to consider the question, if there is such a thing as a question after this, what is the best defense against this whole idea of good being swarmed out by the forces of bad? What is the best way for us to prevent this type of situation? How can it be secured as a matter of constitutional imperative that we basically are able to create that wellness, that reservoir of good that will always outweigh the negative effects of the bad? How is that done? Now, at first I thought that you could enshrine it in something like a piece of document like the Bill of Rights. That's to say, codify what you consider as elemental rights, rights whereby the grubby hands of the legislature, the executive, or for that matter, the judiciary, could be able to basically change it. Because the whole idea of the Constitution, if you think about it, it's not a defense against the majority, right? It's more a defense against the tyranny of the minority, the elites, who are able to basically engineer consent in the masses. And so when something is enshrined, the assumption is that it cannot be removed that easily, but that's not true. Not true at all. Not true at all. That would only be true if you believe that words have form, they have the ability to transcend itself into verbs and action. Well, they don't have that ability. Words are just words. They are basically like instruction manuals that you get whenever you buy a new washing machine or TV. Okay, they just tell you what to do. But if nobody actually goes behind and puts in the 3-point plug and decides to turn on the switch, nothing is going to happen. And it's in that implementation stage, that stage when we humans take control of the word. And that word could be any form of ism. It could be capitalism, it could be communism, or even a hybrid of the two. The fact that you have the human factor involved means that they will always play the game that involves them trying to get a better advantage over whoever else is playing the game alongside them. The whole idea that they could sort of climb up this hierarchy and sit on this monkey throne and be king of the hill for no matter how long it takes. And this is something that is very primal in us. It's something that allows us to look at a lens, a sort of Archimedean lens that allows us a vantage into the human mind. And I guess it's possible because in the corporate world, if you look at it, many of these people are basically seen as martial figures. If you look at the vernacular that occupies the corporate world, takeover, downsizing, expansion, strategic alliance, these are all martial terms. These are terms that basically find comfort in the battlefield, and few commanders would know about these terms very well. And that's how we have always seen the whole idea of rugged individuals who run firms. They have to go out there, they have to kill the competitor in order to get a market share, and they have to sit on top of that hill. But that game, or that idea, though it is reflected in the game that I designed and allowed to play out to its natural end, suggests to me that that may not be the right thing to do. What I'm trying to say to you is that it is all right for us to play the game, But it's not alright when we play the game to a point whereby we have ceased to ask ourselves the one question that we should have asked ourselves from the very beginning, even before we decided to play the game. Were the game players, or were we still be the ones who play the game? My friends, we have come full circle. By this I mean that now you understand the co-relationship between why I took so long and such a convoluted way to reach where we are now, the state of realization, a state of complete understanding. Because we know ourselves. We as human beings cannot be trusted. Oh, I know what I've just said demeans your sensibilities. Because in effect, if you think about it, what I'm trying to say in a different way is that you're a piece of shit. But I'm not trying to say that. I'm trying to say that there are limits to our understanding, and I recognize those limits. And that's why it's important for us to subjugate ourselves to certain higher principles. It's not enough to look at the world in terms of what is right and wrong, or to even try to formulate that idea that there is only one right and there can only be that one way and no other. That idea may have worked once upon a time when human ambition was basically in a very primal stage, where we're just looking at things like making sure there's enough food on the table, making sure that our zinc corrugated roof doesn't give way to the next monsoon. I mean, those aspirations, I guess, suited the whole idea of strong government. But today, that idea has basically lost its appeal. Because there is affluence. I mean, you could say that somebody is poor, but you know, that poor person could be like not really poor in a poor sense. Not really, because even when you're poor, you have what you call infrastructural soundness. So you can't really be poor in the sense that you're like destitute in the streets of Calcutta. That's what I would refer to as poverty, as in an abject sense. But you can never reach that level, not in a society like Singapore. It's not possible. So even the idea of poverty itself is relative. I'm not trying to say that poor people in Singapore don't suffer as much as poor people in Bihar, or for that matter, Kazakhstan. I'm sure they do. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that pain cuts through different levels of emotional experiences, and some of those experiences are made much better by the places where we live in. If you feel sad in, let's say, a city that's sunny, then I'm sure you feel sad, but not as sad as somebody whereby it's raining fucking bloody brimstones and meteorites. I mean, that's a different sort of sadness.